welcome. Our next speaker is Dorte Mandrup. Welcome up on stage, Dorte. Dorte is, without any doubt, one of the most aesthetically adventurous architects in the Nordic region. And if you read on her website, they present themselves in the following way. Dorte Mandrup is a team of die-hard overachievers, underlined die-hard overachievers. We combine our firm grasp on reality with a knack for dreaming out loud. And some of this dreaming out loud has been going on in Sweden recently. They've done a new office for IKEA down in Malmö. They've done a preschool in Rå in Skåne. The preschool won the Wood Prize, Träpriset, and was also nominated for Kasper Salling Prize of last year. So welcome the Danish invasion in the shape of Dorte Mandrup.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mark, for your very nice presentation. Thank you for coming. I promised Mark that I would be no more than 40 minutes, so I'll try to go a little fast. And since I speak English and not Danish, I think that'll be okay. I'll go through 5 projects, some of them a little more thorough than others, and some a little fast. I've tried to somehow go into the theme of materiality and also of research into new materials, trying to understand what the material can bring us in architectural terms. And then there's a mixed-use project that is more about trying to mix different functionalities, which we think is really, really important. When we want to do dense cities, we also need to mix the functions in a much more clever way than we do today. Just a little bit about who we are. We are an office based in Copenhagen. We have more than 20 years of experience, not in own name, but since I went out of Henning Larsen, I've been working by myself for 20 years. We are now almost 50, actually it says 45, but we didn't get to change the slide. Almost 50 employees in the office, and we focus on Scandinavia, mainly because we find that a comfort zone, also culturally, to work and build in Scandinavia, and of course the odd ones around if they come in. We like to base our work on being trusted advisors for about 50% of the projects, because it's really important to us to have clients that come back and we get to learn to know each other, and also we get to somehow make the process much more fun and much more going deeper into certain subjects. And then of course there's the competitions that we all do a lot, and we mainly choose the ones that we think there's an architectural challenge that we would like to go into. We are very ambitious. It's not that awards are all that important, but it is important to us that we strive every time we do something to actually make an architectural point, and so when we do get awards, we actually are pretty proud that we reach to achieve our fellow colleagues' recognition, you could say. We organized very tightly with, of course, a board, a CEO, administrative director, and a creative director, which is me. And then we are 3 associate partners taking care of each segment of what we do, which is transformation, mixed use and housing, education, and workspace. We think that it is very important to be realistic in the world, or to be in the real world, you could say. We don't define ourselves as being theoretical architects, and we don't write very much, but we do quite a lot of research which is very hands-on. We do a lot of tests of everything we do, and we do it working with very different tools. We work a lot with analog models, and at the same time also with very advanced computer 3D models and simulations. So on one hand, you have the analog model, which is great for volume and testing in a contextual way, and then we have, of course, the advanced computerized models that we definitely need also. Lately, we've gone into projects that are more advanced, also geometrically. So having the 3D tools that we have today is really important to the work we do today. So this is a 3D model in there's Revit and Rhino and Grasshopper on top of each other, and we can, by doing that, we can communicate with the also quite advanced engineers, so everything is in the cloud and we can work on the same model. And if we couldn't do this, and if the engineers couldn't do this, we couldn't do these kind of projects. This is, I'll tell about that later. So since Mark asked me to show this project, Forskoler, which is actually quite an old project, I think last year's Kasper Salling Prize didn't really know about it, so we were nominated for this year's, but actually it's been there for a while, and it was a project that started in 2006, I think, and it had a long history of overclocking. It's right on the beach in Roer, which is, for those of you from Stockholm might not know, is outside Helsingborg. Beautiful, beautiful fishing village, now I think taken over by the very resourceful, beautiful place. And of course it's very difficult to have a new building on this beach that has been public for so many years. It's actually an extension to an existing school that is listed, and by placing this school in front of the other of the existing school, we tried to make this be part of the dunes and part of the landscape, and also really not trying to take away the view from the people that were having the houses behind this. So the main idea here is to look at the existing fishing village, which has very tiny houses that are all turned to make protection towards the wind, and at the same time integrate this into a dune landscape on the beach. And this is how it looks when you walk along the beach and you have this landscapey thing clad in wood, and with these fishing villages almost sunken into the dunes. And of course, here you can see the beach is very close by the sea, with the western wind coming in. And actually during this process, since it was so long, the limit of where to build was rising from 250 to 3 meters, so we had to compress everything inside the house because the detail plan actually only allowed for a certain height. So it was quite a difficult situation to build this and take away half a meter for ventilation and so forth. We replaced the landscape and made a artificial landscape to make it look natural in a way, but actually we are 3 meters above the sea level. The thought of the fishing huts in the landscape also is a structure inside the house. So you have these 4 groups of children that had their own group room, and then you have the landscape in between, which is basically common. So you can still be at home, but you can also try to meet the neighbors in the other groups in the landscape in between. And of course, somehow trying to relate to the children's scale by placing the windows mainly for children, not for grown-ups, was important. So since this was a very low building, and we wanted the children to be in direct contact with the landscape all the time. And creating, of course, inner courtyards to protect against the wind from the west coming from the sea, and in between the existing house and the water. the building is a full wooden construction consisting of plywood construction on the inside, creating these huts that are also making storage spaces in each of the bays or of the group rooms, and then it's on the outside is clad in Robinia, which is a very sustainable wood that's grown in the central Europe region, and doesn't have to be treated in any ways, and sort of basically acts like teak or some other more exotic wood. So by doing that, you have this, of course, this full form that goes grey when it's patinating, and then goes color-wise with the beach and with the sand. And seen from the top floor, of course, we clad the roof as well. Originally, it was thought of as being a public space where everybody could walk, but the municipality thought that was too dangerous. But also looking down on this is, of course, important that you're not from the higher points in the existing school have to look down on a black tar roof. So this is part of the expression too. On the inside, you have these load-bearing constructions that are creating the space for the home or for the home of the children, the groups, and of course also creating some kind of order in the play tools and things going on. So we have these shelves as well, of course with glass to create a noise reduction between the rooms. Sorry, I have a cold. Looking out towards the water, you have these really big windows, and I think actually the children don't care that much where they are with the view, but of course for the grown-ups, and I think also remembering this as being a beautiful place with a beautiful light. Just a tiny detail of trying to use all the space you have. Space is a resource. You have to be really very careful to use it well. So every time we do things for children, we will also make, since children are not so high, they can use the space twice, and being able to use the space above the wardrobe makes a really nice playroom. And then of course being a Dane, where we never see the sun setting on the eastern coast. It's fascinating to sit here and see the sun setting. This is another landscape project, you can almost say. It's the Wadden Sea Centre, which is a competition we won a few years ago, and it's placed right on the edge of UNESCO protected area, the Wadden Sea, which is an amazing area. It's where all birds coming from the north, from the Arctic, going down to Africa every year, they would fly down here, stand for 6 weeks, and feed, and they will fly further down to Africa. I actually thought that the birds would land once in a while, but that's not what they do. They fly for days, and they come here, they're really starving, and they will feed in this very nutritious seabed. So it's protected. It's going all the way down to Holland. And the idea that we had here was, since this is a really open landscape, very, very flat, you have a horizon all around you and barely any trees. So the idea here was to try to merge with the landscape, and of course using material that was very close by. Here you have some of the birds. Sometimes you have the black sun, where you have the birds making figures on the sky. And a lot of people come down here to visit and to learn about mainly the birds. And of course the Wadden Sea and the importance in the kind of global ecological system. So this is kind of the nature around. Not many trees, not naturally coming there, but they have planted trees, of course. And this is what the Wadden Sea is. There's a rise and there's a tide. So you have sometimes it's fully watered, and sometimes it's not. And every time the tide is going away. There's lots and lots of food for the birds here. Trying to gain land, I think, has been tried quite a lot. Now it's not, it's forbidden, you could say. But this is the way you would gain land, just by making these fences, and you would make sand or gain sand around them for a long time. But going out on these walks is part of what the center is about, but it's also about explaining why this is so important. This is the original place, not very attractive, you could say. It's somehow trying to be a farmhouse, which is not a farmhouse of this area, you could say. It's not a regional building tradition. It's made in the 90s. It has this really huge opening towards the fields here, and everything is somehow a little bit out of proportion. So this was basically what we had as a starting point, and then the competition was about how to use this place and at the same time create twice as many square meters for a new exhibition and for a learning center for children and grown-ups as well, and of course for cafes and so forth. So the idea was to clad the inner farmhouse with an outer farmhouse. So you have the inner farmhouse in here, and you have one of the small buildings here. You have the existing building here. And so we basically put a new farmhouse on the outside and a new part of the house here, put a new building for learning out here, and then using the material of the area, which is straw, and which is also been used since the Iron Age and the Vikings that were here. So it's somehow really, it's a very, very old tradition, but it's also something that is extremely natural to the area. So as you see the plan here from the competition, existing house here and here and here, and then we go on the outside with a new building here and a new building here. So part of this is being very functional. It's about reusing the existing house without having to change too much, not spending too much money in the change of the existing house that actually had this cafeteria and had toilets and other functions here. So keeping that and making a new entrance. The old entrance was here. Making a new entrance from out here and being able to make a circulation that was natural in the new exhibition, going around here and back and out, which is quite simple. And this is how it looks. It's very fresh pictures. We opened 3 or 4 days ago, actually. It was Thursday last week. And cladding the whole new house with this straw, which also have this cut that shows this is where the entrance is, and there's actually, you can hardly miss it. As you can see, the landscape is just not done yet, but will be done in a few months, and creating this new boardwalk and the entrance here, and there you go in. And of course, the way that the straw and the wood is somehow patinating will take color of the existing landscape around it, which is gray and gray-green. And so the straw that is quite new, which is yellow now, will go gray eventually, as the wood that we were cladding the existing buildings with, which is the same wood as you saw in the kindergarten, Robinia, and the existing house stops here. So from here, it's actually new, and we meet the straw in this corner. So another thing about this building was that we and the client and the exhibition architect wanted this house to relate to the area. Instead of going into this exhibition hall, everything is black, like a black box. You can do whatever you want to, and then you go outside again. It could be anywhere in the world. So having a relationship to the outside, even though it's quite difficult when you do exhibitions, that you cannot control the light and so forth, was an important thing. So the whole exhibition is kind of worked very closely with the exhibition architect to create the daylight where we could create it and use it as part of the exhibition. And this space in here is a laboratory where you, after being outside, picking your different animals and stuff, you can go in here and you can study in microscopes, look at what you've found together with teachers and so forth. I think the whole feeling of the straw is amazing. It's like you want to touch it. It's really texturized, and it's also really handmade. It's you harvest the straw in a close by area, and you bundle it, and you would throw it up, sew it, and then you push it on and back in place. And there's no cut. There's no violence involved in doing this. So everything is pushed back in place. So you have a thickness, of course. Here, there's also construction underneath, and then you sew the whole thing in the top with needles and so forth. It's very beautiful, I think. Outdoor boardwalk in large, also not treated at all. And you have a little sneak view into the exhibition here, and another view into the other one. You only see shadows, of course, and then you have the entrance here. The inner courtyard will have a landscape project, which is mainly about the tundra, which is far up north, where a lot of these birds actually give birth in the summertime. And it's very subtle with brick laid floors here, and then you will have the tundra in the middle. This is from the entrance of the learning center, or whatever you call it. You come out here. You put on waders, which is rubber boots that go up here, and you can walk into the sea on these walks. But in here you have in here you have 100 waders that you can put up in all sizes, and then you would actually walk out here and start your adventure. And again, the entrance from the other side. Yeah. And the interior is, of course, shaped by the shape of the quite simple buildings, but when you put the walls in different places, you actually get very dramatic interior, a very dramatic geometry. So by placing the walls at not right angles and so forth, we got very different spaces in these quite simple buildings. Of course, the construction here is not wood. It's wood in the learning center, but here we needed to have an open space without any kind of beams. So it's a steel frame structure, and with the natural light coming in. This is an installation showing how the swarms of birds will rise, and this is the end of the exhibition. It's a very sort of slow exhibition. There's not a lot of computer games and so forth. They're very subtle, I think, and also the exhibition architect has made a sort of as very sustainable, I would say, because it will also be interesting in 10 years. So walking around here, it's a mixture of sensory feelings. You can put your hand into the basin and feel the fish and whatever is in here, and at the same time you have a very advanced computerized 3D overlaying the things. Yeah, that's from the building side, and also the way the light, when the other pictures is actually taken the worst day in January, but when you see the light on these, light and shadow on these pretty simple forms, and the materials, it's quite overwhelming, I would say. Yeah, and here's, if anybody's nerdy enough to think this is interesting, this is how you do it, and you actually just put these up. You start from the bottom, and then you push them back, and then you go all the way up, and you sew everything together. Yeah, just some light and shadow. the wood here is very black in the beginning and will go grey in 6-7 months. But right now it's pretty dark. The next project is another project in the landscape. Actually, usually we used to say that we were city architects and we did things in difficult urban surroundings. But mainly these projects I've brought today is in the landscape. It's not what we usually do, but I thought this was quite interesting because the Icefjord Centre is also in a Unesco protected area. It's up north in the Arctic, in Greenland. It's where the most or the largest glacier in Greenland is placed. You have the glacier far in here, and it will carve the icebergs, and they will be pushed out in towards the Disco Bay. And before they reach the Disco Bay, there's a ridge in the bottom, so they will all kind of jam together, and after they melt, they will carve once again out into the Disco Bay and sail away. It's very dramatic, very, very beautiful area. At the same time, this is where you can see the climate change. So when you have, maybe we should get some presidents up here, but when you have, you want to see for yourself about the climate change, you would go with a helicopter here and you can see how far back the glacier now has gone the last 10 years compared to the last 200 years. So it's withdrawing really, really rapidly. And this center is about the UNESCO protected area, the beautiful surroundings, but also very much about the climate change. So yeah. So as you can see, we are in the Arctic, and it's really only like 2 months a year. You have a summer, and the rest of the time there's snow. It's pretty harsh climate, and the wind factor is extremely strong. At the same time, it's a tourist goal, one of the most important tourist goals for Greenland, and it's very important to help this area also to get workplaces and so forth. There's a lot of unemployment in Greenland, and part of the strategy of getting the Greenlandic more employment is to enhance the tourist area. So, yes. So you have a small city in here. It's called Ilulissat. In the old days in Danish, it was called Jakobshavn. This is where the whale adventure was going on because of the ice fjord and because of these nutritions that got out. This is the ice fjord. You have a lot of nutritions coming with the ice. So there's a lot of whales up here. They will go from Africa and up here to feed and to go back. And so you have whales. And in the 17th, 18th century, Danes and Norwegians would go up there and kill them and have these oil factories. So it's an old town. It's quite small. It's 4,000 people and 3,000 sledge dogs that are actually placed close to our center here. And there is this route of walking route in this UNESCO protected area going around here. So this is the site. It's just outside the UNESCO area. And here you see the Icefjord, and you see the glacier all the way back here. It was out here 100 years ago. And this is all about how the icebergs will melt from underneath, and then they turn over and sail away. Yeah, this is a summertime view. Really amazing. The landscape is changing all the time because these icebergs are floating, and you never know whether you can get around them or not. Almost no vegetation. This is kind of the largest you get, or the highest you get. No trees, and very sensitive to any kind of if you kind of take this away, it will take 50 years to grow again. And the same thing with the mosses around the rocks. So it's really, really sensitive. And building, this is the site, and you have the Icefjord down here. So building on this site, we thought, we should not try to blast or to do anything in concrete. We should use a sustainable material, and we shouldn't be very lightweight on the site. So here you have the UNESCO path going towards the Icefjord. In Greenland, of course, there's a really old traditional building tradition, which is from prehistoric times. They would use stones and tuff. But since the 17th century, it's been wood that's been the building material, even though it's been shipped up from Norway or Denmark, mainly Norway, and some of them are actually prefab houses that are shipped up here and placed, of course, on the top of a rock, but because when the snow is melting, there's a lot of water around. So snow is a big thing here. It's not so much there's snow from September until maybe June, but it's not so much the snow load as it is the snow buildup. When the wind is blowing twice the factor we have in Denmark, which is quite a lot, the snow will be blown around all the time. So some of the houses that have been not skillfully built in these and sometimes is built by, or usually built by Danes, they would be placed like this, and you would have a snow build-up on the back of the house, which is 2 or 3 stories high. So it's really important to consider how would you place a building here to make the least snow build-up in the winter time. So by making this into kind of boomerang shape, you have the wind coming in here, and there's only this small snow build-up here and here, and by lifting up the building, you also get the possibility of the snow blowing away underneath the building. So that is part of the way we shape the building. Also being in a wind tunnel with potato, flour, and so forth to try to understand how this would work. Another thing which is of course important when you place a building like this, which is basically something that is done from Danish foundations also with some collaboration of the Greenlandic government, but it's of course also important that you're not placing a new strange building that the locals don't have any relationship to. So it was important also to us that the building is also a part of the path, and is also part of going out here and watching when the first sun is getting up in the end of January. You can sit here and watch it come over the horizon and go down again. And of course, making some kind of protection towards the wind at the same time. So basically, this is a frame construction. It looks very simple, and it's as a shape, it is simple. Since we're now doing the project drawings, I can tell you it's pretty complicated. But there's of course a system in this. But going from a triangle to a rectangle to a triangle in the other end enables us to make a walking bridge on top of and going down to the Isitt Icefjord trail. Yeah. Okay. I'll maybe be a little bit faster. The plan has changed. Doesn't matter. And of course, lifting the whole building. So this is about the inner place here. This is just a projection, and the outside of the building is lifted up underneath the terrain. Everything is placed on pillars, so you don't have any concrete foundations. Everything in wood, inside and outside, with very little steel. Yeah. I'll go through this. So going through this, you feel the changing from the inside to the outside, and you get this really wonderful view. And this is the only place you can actually see the real Icefjord on the terrain, because you have a mountain in front here. Yeah. And this is the research part of the building. Have researchers working here. Shop and cafe, of course. And this is the renders. Winter time should still be in use. And of course, the researchers are important to have activities around the center here. And summertime. Sunset. And very cold winter. Yes. Right now we are working with a koya wood to make some kind of construction that can withstand the harsh weather without having any treatment. Yeah. Wow. Once again. So, last one. This is a project we just won half a year ago. Right now we're doing the project drawings. It's in the Danish Harbour. So this is the city placement. You have this Danish engineers union in these two houses, and they wanted to have a new conference center with restaurant. And the idea was that we wanted to place a building in between the two buildings here, and then you could still look underneath from the back, and so you can see the harbour front in the front here. So the construction is pretty daring. You only have two legs, you could say, or they have two construction legs here in steel, and tensile structure holding it back, and then the rest is kind of floating in between the two buildings. Of course, with access from the existing building across, which was an old bridge that was there. So this is also part of the shape. The building is called the Opal. And the idea is that it's a wooden construction, it's a composite wood and steel construction, and the outside is panels that has LED behind a technical textile. So you have these sort of glowing panels that can glow in different colors of white. Very technical drawings. Underneath here, the landscape is going to be in one piece in concrete. So there's a small basin underneath here that can reflect the light underneath, and you could also use it and walk through here from the harbour to the road. Restaurant on the second floor with contact to the existing building and existing kitchen and so forth. And conference on top. That can be divided into two parts. And this is the situation plan. Yeah, seen from behind. This is down here, the existing situation where you have the two buildings and a bridge in between. Section, also pretty demanding technically, you could say, but also we really need our rhino and grasshopper and everything we have to be able to do this building. And here's the model. Of course, the light simulation and heat simulation and so forth is important to where we can open up. Yes. And here's the work. I don't do this. Really great to work with engineers in this way. Demands a lot from them, but it's also really it's a great resource. And this is the construction, steel, wood, more steel where there's need for it, and so it's optimized all the way around. Yes. This is really a crude, you can hardly call it a render, but it's a 3D. And the whole section. I think I'll stop here, right? Thank you.
Mange tak.
Tak.
I'm so impressed that you get so much architecture out of your budgets, it seems to me.
Thank you.
How do you do it? How do you tweak the budget so that the money ends up in promoting expressive architecture?
Well, we've been doing quite a lot of quite low budget buildings also. We do social housing and so forth, and I think the thing is mainly to keep on trying to get the most out of the money, and not sort of give up and say, okay, this is a very cheap house, I can't do anything. Since architecture is not only about making daring buildings, I know this one is daring, and it's certainly not inexpensive. It's an expensive building, but I think making the priorities out of the budget is part of what we do, and I think keeping very close to the budget, knowing knowing the prices and doing the calculations and so forth is extremely important. I think if you don't do calculations, if you don't know what the prices are on the market, it's very difficult to get any architecture out of anything, maybe.
But is it often the case that you end up in a discussion with the client where you tell the client that if you move that lump of money and put it into the architecture, you will get this. Otherwise, you'll just merely get this.
I think we're very lucky to have really good clients that want architecture.
You seem to have really good clients.
So, but I think the main thing is if you are responsible for the budget, you would also keep track of it, right? So you will have to prioritize all the way. And of course, together with the client, where do we want to spend our money? Is it in the construction? You want to have really, really daring constructions, which is extremely expensive, or you want to have this and this and this. And I think so making the concept also fit somehow with the expectations of the budget is probably also great. I mean, you cannot make something that's cantilevered 20 meters and expect to be able to do it if the budget is not for it. So you need to think also budget when you do concepts.
I think what's so interesting with the raw preschool is that if you would just expand that 10 times maybe, it would be a museum. But it's for children. It's a preschool. It's
a very small building.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I think that's incredibly impressive how you can actually get so much architecture into that building.
Well, to be honest, also I think there was here again we had a great client that really wanted to behave nicely when you actually had a site that was so amazing as this. But it's a very simple construction actually. It's and it's a wood construction. It's all done by wooden elements. So of course you need to be careful when you do the geometry that is not too difficult.
No.
But yeah.
Another thing that strikes me when I see your work is how far you've come since you left Henning Larsen. Henning Larsen, as most of you probably know, was the master of the 90-degree angle, I would say. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, I guess so. And the round one, right? And there was a very geometric. I really liked working at Henning Larsen, and I think we learned a lot in the office, and I think they also do different things now, right? There's also times has changed, but in Henning Larsen was of course influencing everything. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. But I mean, if you look at the work that you showed here now, is there a single 90-degree angle here? I don't think I found one.
Well, we do have them.
Yeah. And what is the reason for the architecture having become so organic? Is it because of you and your ambitions, or is it because of the modern computer technique, or a combination possibly?
Well, you certainly couldn't have done the detailed drawings without modern computer techniques. I don't think that's what generates the form. I think the ambition to somehow make an answer to a problem that also has maybe an artistic quality is part of and that doesn't have to be extremely expensive or very organic. Or I mean, we also made quite simple buildings. So I think it's more about insisting on that art is also part of architecture.
Would you have been able to do that project 20 years ago?
Well, I don't think the computer techniques could have helped us 20 years ago, but no, maybe not.
No. Would you say that your architecture is typically Scandinavian? You started off saying that you work mainly in the Scandinavian region.
I think there's one thing that's very important when you are a Scandinavian architect, or at least if you're brought up in the Danish tradition and the Scandinavian tradition, is that you have to think about the contextual problems.
Yeah.
And when I've been teaching around the world, you realize that this is not something you take for granted. And I think the whole Jan Gehl upbringing that we all have, and also the tradition of how we do housing is something that we really have in our backpack, and I think that's very Scandinavian. I think the consideration of the scale of the relationship between inside and outside and so forth is very Scandinavian. The care, I guess, even if you do quite simple housing units.
Yeah. Because we spend so much time there, do you think? Or what's the reason for showing so much care?
I think, I mean, at least in our tradition and in yours as well, there's been some really, really great architects that went into functionalism and really took it seriously to solve the problems of the everyday life. And I think that's very much part of our tradition, where if you go to the States and if you teach there, it's all about being amazing or being outstanding.
Awesome.
Awesome. Yeah, it's not. Sorry, I hope that, I like America, but I think that the idea of the everyday life being just as important as being awesome.
Yeah.
And I think is of course part of the Scandinavian tradition altogether.
One final question: what's wrong with Swedish architecture?
Nothing's wrong.
Nothing is wrong.
I think there's I hope I don't offend anybody. It's only to be nice, but I think there's a problem in the way the business is working. I think there's a problem in the way that architects are no longer in charge of their own budgets, of their own collaborations. I think there's that's a whole thing about the industry. People tell me it's about the millionprogrammet, that the contractors kind of took over, and I think that is something that's really hard to fight, and I think that's what really should be fought. I think that architects are getting so professional, and they're really experts in a lot of offices, and you should know about both technical and economic responsibility, and if you take that back, I think architecture can be a lot better.
But I imagine that architects in Denmark have also been backed by politicians, maybe, and a general interest in architecture.
I think there's. I mean, if you go to Finland, right, you have a totally different notion of design and architecture.
Yes.
I think everybody appreciates quality. It's not so great in Denmark anymore, but there has been a period where there were politicians and city architects that could, because of the good times and the good market, could actually enhance better architecture.
And you've also been interested in looking abroad, I feel, to a greater extent than we have. That you have a lot of international architects working in Copenhagen, for example, a lot of international influence.
Yeah, we've always been kind of half German, half European. I mean, I guess Sweden and Norway, Finland is much more
solitaires, maybe
original, or whatever you would say. We've been so influenced all the time, and I think good architects like Arne Jacobsen, everybody's been influenced, and it's okay, I think, to work that way. But
yeah. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for listening.